Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mad Scientist Brewing Beer Education Series. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Doppelbock style as we continue to explore some malt-related topics leading up to my main malt and multi-beers course being offered at the Main Tasting Center next Tuesday, which there are still some seats if you'd like to sign up for. So as I mentioned, we are drinking Doppelbock today, so cheers. All right, so let's take a look into the vital statistics for Doppelbock. All right, so the Doppelbock has an ABV of 7.0 to 10.0% alcohol, which makes it elevated to high as far as alcohol level. It has an original gravity of 1.072 to 1.112, or 17.5 to 26.4 degrees Plato. It has a final gravity of 1.016 to 1.024, or 4.1 to 6.1 degrees Plato. It has an IBU value of 16 to 26 with a low perceived bitterness, and an SRM value of 6 to 25, which gives it a gold to brown. There's quite a bit of a range for the color, as I'll mention in the appearance section here. All right, so for appearance, this being a lager, it will have good clarity and a large, creamy, and persistent head to it. It's just said that there's kind of a pale and a dark version of the Doppelbock. The dark versions are copper to dark brown in color and often have ruby highlights and an off-white head. And the pale versions are a deep gold to light amber in color with a white head. Aroma-wise, they have a very strong maltiness, possibly with some light caramel notes and up to a moderate alcohol aroma. This is kind of, with Eisbock, I would say the king of malty beers if you're looking for a flavor that's strictly malt. I'll touch that too on the flavor section, but yeah, back to the aromas. You will have virtually no hop aroma. This is a malt-forward beer. The dark versions have significant and rich Maillard products with a deep toasted malt and possibly a little bit of a chocolate-like aroma that should never be roasted or burnt. This doesn't really have any roasted malts to it. You'll get some moderately low dark fruit like plums or dark grapes or fruit leather sometimes, and the pale versions are going to have a rich and strong and often toasty malt presence, possibly with a little bit of light floral and spicy hop accent, but only really in the paler versions. Flavor-wise, this is very rich and malty beer. The hop bitterness varies a bit from moderate to moderately low, but it always allows the malt flavor to dominate. There could be a small amount of hop flavor, but that is optional. Most are fairly malty sweet on the palate, but should have an impression of attenuation on the finish. The impression of sweetness comes from the low hopping rather than incomplete fermentation. It does have a somewhat high finishing gravity, but it is pretty well attenuated beer. It also has a clean fermentation profile, being a lager. The dark versions have malt and ester flavors similar to the aroma, while the pale versions have a strong, bready, and toasty malt flavor, with a little bit of light floral, spicy, or herbal hop flavor, and typically a drier finish than the darker ones. For mouthfeel, it's got a medium to full body, with moderate to moderately low carbonation. It's very smooth without any harshness or astringency to it, and it can have a little bit of light alcohol warmth, but it should not be too harsh or burning alcohol. Looking at the ingredients for making a Doppelbock, you're looking at Pils, Vienna, and Munich malts, pretty standard for any continental lager. Occasionally there will be some dark malt for color adjustment as well. Traditional German hops and clean lager yeast are used, and the decoction mashing method is also traditional for this and many other German beers. So looking at the history of Doppelbock here, this is a specialty for Bavaria that originated in the city of Munich, first made by the monks of St. Francis of Paula in the 1700s. Historically, it was a little less well attenuated than it is now, with higher sweetness and lower alcohol levels, as the monks were using this mostly for sustenance during the Lenten months when they had to be fasting. They couldn't eat at certain times, or certainly couldn't eat meat on Fridays. So they would, for whatever reason, this was excluded, so they were able to drink plenty of Doppelbock. And they referred to it as liquid bread because it was pretty much the main nourishment that they were getting during that time. The Paulaner Brewery created the Salvatore brand, and that's kind of been tradition afterwards to include the ator suffix when you're naming this beer. For a while, they pretty much had the copyright on that, but I think it's gotten to the point where now anybody really can use something that to not be distinguished, specifically the Paulaner, and it's more associated with Doppelbocks in general at this point. Traditionally, they are a darker beer, a darker brown color, although the paler examples, as I mentioned, do exist. They are pretty recent. So I've actually not seen a pale Doppelbock yet, but they are out there. To compare the style, this is stronger, richer, and more full-bodied than either a Dunkelbock or a Hellsbock. The paler versions also will show a higher attenuation and less dark fruity character than the darker versions do. If you're going to look for some good examples, the Paulaner Salvatore, like I mentioned, also Eyinger Celebrator, and the one I've got here, the Weinstoffen Corbinian. That didn't have the Ator in the name, but if you do find a beer that has a similar naming scheme like that, you can be pretty sure that it is a Doppelbock. All right, so that is it for this video and the Doppelbocks. As I mentioned, there are still some seats left for the class that I'm teaching on Tuesday. If you want to sign up, check the link in the description below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Instagram, go to my YouTube page and the link is there, or visit the Maine Tasting Center's website and sign up for the class directly through them. Until next time, cheers.